He's a bad man. Very bad.
Who's bad?
I'm asking you one last time. Do you admit to the accusations made against you in this court of law, sir?
You and I, we were a team. You were a god to me.
Finally, the long-awaited Sundowner Sunset Date County Edition is on.
And the lucky destination is none other than the City of Champions.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sundowner Sunset Date Eldoret.
29th February 2020. All roads lead to the Sikh Union Club on Uhuru Street for a day of activity, music and fun.
Sundowner, live on location from 5 to 7 p.m. Then Sir Elvis will take the floor till late.
Meet your favorite show hosts,
Catherine Donye, the Wicked Weekend Man John Obongo Jr.
and his consultant Bill Odidi, among others.
Get advance tickets at 800 shillings only on M-Pesa, pay bill business number 222911. Account number Sundowner Hush. Gate charges will be 1,000.
Sundowner Sunset Date Eldoret, brought to you by KBC English Service in partnership with Sundowner Eldoret Chapter and the Valentine Cake House.
Hey, this is Eliud Kipchoge. Sundowner is coming to the City of Champions. That's Eldoret. Come one, come all, and enjoy the show.
Charity.
The Sundowner Way.
Well, a very good evening to you. You are just in time for Walking the Talk this evening. My name is Catherine Achenga. Now, this evening, we will be focusing on what Kenyans have been talking about. It's all about paying your taxes. Every year, KRA is expected to collect money that is going to meet our budget, but somehow they fall short of collecting this money. What are some of the tax evasion loopholes, and how can we be able to overcome this in the continued war on graft? That is the question this evening. But before I introduce you to the guests who will be joining us this evening from the Kenya Revenue Authority, who will give us some insights on what are some of the challenges and how they're trying to meet the budget deficit, I will quickly cross over to my co-presenter Safina Cheng, who is on the other side of the studio, who will give you some of the insights of what has transpired this week when it comes to the continued war on graft, and of course give you some of the lines where you can interact with us and give us your feedback. Safin, good evening to you.
Good evening, Achenga, and of course you're right. This is actually the point where we also allow our audience, our viewers, a chance to have a say in the conversation going on in studio. So you are given a chance to interact with us on social media. That is at KBC Channel 1, at Kato Achenga, and at Safin_Acheng. Those are our social media platforms. And of course, I will be giving you interesting statistics about how the progress we are making in terms of fighting graft in the course of these particular broadcast. There is a report by the Transparency International that gave the global perception on corruption index of the year 2019. So we'll be looking at how we are faring as a country in terms of the progress we are making in fighting corruption, and of course how we are faring even across the East African region. So that is a plus on this particular show. Stay with us until the tail end of it. And of course, remember, we also want to hear your thoughts on some of the issues that we are talking about in studio. Remember, today it's all about the tax that you're paying as a common mwananchi. So on social media, you can begin sharing your thoughts with us, and we're asking you, in what ways do you think corruption has affected the management of revenue that is collected? That is your tax. So in what ways do you think corruption has affected the management of the tax that you pay? You can share your thoughts with us, plus other issues, of course, that you feel you want to share in terms of the conversation that will be going on in studio. That is at Safin_Aching, at Kato Achenga, at KBC Channel 1. Our handles are open beginning right now till the very end of the program, and even after that. Achenga?
Well, thank you, Safin. Of course, give us your feedback. She will be back later to tell us what you have to say. But for now, let me introduce you to the guests who are joining me in studio this evening. I have with me on my immediate left, Esther Masibai, who is the Chief Manager, Ethics Compliance at the Kenya Revenue Authority. It's good to have you this evening, Esther.
Good morning. Good evening.
Next to her, we have David Ontweka, who is the Chief Manager, Litigation at the Kenya Revenue Authority. It's good to have you this evening, David.
Thank you.
All right. Kenyans are always asking, why is it that we cannot collect our taxes 100%? What would be your response, David?
Thank you for hosting us. I'll say that taxes are collected in line with how the economy is performing. Mm-hmm. You may project that you'll be collecting so much revenue, but other factors come in to inhibit or impede your targets.
Mm-hmm. What are some of these factors?
Some of these factors are dependent on the performance of the economy. Mm-hmm. Others are challenges to do with tax evasion, and others are like leakages that come in the process of tax collection. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, Esther, in terms of tax evasion, that has been one of your biggest problems, yes. And it has mostly got to do with, is it the economy or just how the public reacts when it comes to paying their taxes and the feeling that it doesn't get used the way it should?
Actually, tax evasion is basically the attitude to pay tax. Mm-hmm. People and some taxpayers are not willing to pay. So we have to run against them, to fix them, to come and pay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do we stop this culture of not wanting to pay your taxes?
We have put in place measures to do that. Like we do tax investigation for the taxpayers who are not willing to pay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it possible, David, to break that culture?
That's a very tough question. That culture has developed over time. Yeah. And for us to then say that we create a tax-paying culture, a lot of education is required. And that then goes to say that we need to start very early, for instance, from schools, and then trying to tell the publics to understand what brings development is the taxes they pay. Mm-hmm. And for us then to shift that culture, we need to demonstrate that the development, the infrastructure, the social services such as schools, health, and all these are supported using taxes. Mm-hmm. So that the public then shifts to say, let's pay to expect the delivery of these services. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way we can have the services delivered once people have developed this, or they have this culture of paying taxes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There are those who would argue perhaps that the processes are a bit tedious. That is why they'd rather not even begin it in the first place. What would you say in terms of trying to ease the processes for Kenyans to be able to file their taxes and be willing to pay?
We have done a lot of automation of the KRA process from 2003 to date. A lot of procedures are done online, like we have domestic taxes, we have the iTax, we have the ICMS, Integrate Customs Management System, all those we have. Yeah.
In terms of access, to the people who, would not really even tell, those people who don't even have emails, yet, yes. We expect them to pay their taxes. How do you reach this network,
we have,
who are not online?
We have simplified, even people can pay through SMS, the M-Pesa. Yeah. They can do returns and then they pay SMS through the M-Pesa for an amount which is less than 100,000. Yeah.
Has it been efficient in terms of getting people to pay?
I'll say yes. And look, you'll see how it was difficult to manage queues where people were physically queuing to come and pay at the counters, going to the banks to pay at the counters. But from the use of technology, people are using mobile money transfer. You see in banks we have PesaLinks where people can transfer money from this account to the other. But I would say that because of the simplification of the payment system, those queues were eliminated. The only challenge maybe, as you asked the question, is how do we then reach those who are in far, deep places where there's no network?
Yeah.
That's why in the expansion of the tax base, the system is now being simplified so that they are told, pay that which you are able to pay because of the size of the business the taxpayers of that category are involved in.
In terms of those who don't pay, are we finding a way in which we can discourage them not to pay? Like, stringent measures that would make one, because not paying taxes is a crime. But how many Kenyans even know that in the first place?
I will say that we have a mechanism in place. We have an investigation wing which deals with the investigation based on the information they received from members of the public. We have an intelligence gathering system where we receive the intelligence. We are told this particular taxpayer is got some income or is doing business, but they are not remitting. Then they will be profiled, information sent to the investigators who will go and confirm the status of such taxpayers. Once they are caught, they are found to be involved in those kind of tricks, what will happen is that they will be subjected to a prosecution process. Those who don't know, they will be advised that they need then to prepare documentation. They are assessed and told this is the amount that you owe and you need to pay. That amount will always having penal consequences. That is, penalties and interest are added to the tax that they didn't pay, and they are told to make payments.
We'll be looking at the numbers, but you want to say something?
Yeah, I can also add, besides the investigation of the taxpayers who are not willing, internally on staff, we normally have an internal investigation. Sometimes staff collude with the taxpayers to assist them not to pay. So we've put in place measures for investigation on staff under Intelligence and Strategic Operations Department. We do that investigations. Once we have finalized the investigation cases, we present to disciplinary committee and they give a verdict. And so many officers have been actually terminated because of that.
And how are you sensitizing, the staff against this kind of practices? Trying to ensure they practice, ethical practices when it comes to their work?
Actually, all the initiatives that we undertake in KRA, we sensitize both the staff and the stakeholders. We have the IOs who are preaching like the gospel every day, every month, they're always there. But as a department, we also do it every quarterly. And in terms of the awareness for the taxpayers, we have all the regions, we have the integrity assurance officers who do that through the seminars. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And we also use the media, like now we are here to educate them. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. You talked about, prosecution for those who are found to have, evaded tax. If you were, I don't know if you have the numbers, but what would you say the numbers look like when it comes to successful prosecutions and, recovering the money that, people have been evading to pay?
Like, maybe I can give, like from last year, we had a prosecution of tax evasion. We managed to finalize, we prosecuted 122 tax evasion cases with financial implications of 12.96 billion. And from that, a total of 228 individuals were involved. And these 200 people, 222 involved some are KRA staff. Yeah.
So how were you able to recover the whole amount?
Actually, like we are at different stages of prosecution. Like during the year, 29 cases were finalized. Yeah, which is an improvement because like 2017-18, we had a total of 14 cases finalized. So we are improving with time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And perhaps I will add that it may not be immediate recovery. Some of them could be cases, attempts which were being done But the purpose of taking those people to court is to stop them from making those attempts. That is, the offense was not fully complete. It is that they were found in some designs. Those who were found that they had committed, some are still ongoing, and because of other issues we can't then discuss them, but that process is ongoing. It's a measure which has been put in place to send a message that if you are found to be participating in tax evasion, then you will face the law in terms of prosecution. And the laws are very punitive, because once somebody is convicted, they are likely to be ordered to pay almost 3 times the tax that they are going to evade. Yeah.
Has it acted as a deterrent, to those who are thinking of engaging in tax evasion?
We have seen some positive development in that area, because there are those who now come and request that, yes, I was involved in this, but then can you also look at it that we have some kind of plea bargain, where they say like, yes, I was caught in this, there is this tax which is there. So what we are encouraging, that those who have a way of coming up to say that, yes, I'm owning up, then they are encouraged to see that they pay their share, even as the prosecution process goes on. Yeah.
I can also add, in terms of internally on staff, actually, like the success rate in terms of investigation is good. We have about 54%. Like from the last 2 years, 2018, 2019, we laid off, from the investigation, we laid off 100 staff.
That is last year,
yes,
2018, 2019?
Yeah, and we have seen that. And you remember last year, around May, we had to collaborate with the DCI, and we had some staff arrested, about 80 arrested.
Was that
because
case
of
concluded?
Yes, yeah. And again,
the case is still ongoing.
Yes, yeah. Yes. So we cannot discuss so much because
it's in
court,
of
just
course.
mentioning.
Yes.
Yeah. And besides the investigation, we have other measures, like we are doing lifestyle audit, which will started last financial year, 2018-19, and so far we had finalized 12 cases on lifestyle audit. We also do vetting for the senior position from manager up to and above. And so far last year, we did that vetting for 89 staff. We also do background checks for the junior staff, from officer to assistant manager, for the promotion and recruitment, both those who are coming from outside and those who are already in the system for promotion. And therefore, we did about 22 staff.
In the last financial year. All right. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about what are some of the ways in which people try to engage in tax fraud. But before we discuss that, let me quickly cross over to Safin, who will give you some of the data when we talk about issues of graft and tax evasion in our country. Over to you, Safin.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Now, this is actually one of the issues that we were to focus on today, just to show you what progress we've made in terms of how we are fighting corruption in our country. What we're discussing today matters tax evasion, just one of the ways in which we could be having a loophole where corruption could find its way. Now, what I'm about to take you through is a report that was released by Transparency International on the 23rd of January this year, 2020. It is the Global Corruption Perception Index of the year 2019. Now, just to explain to you what this means, so that when I take you through it and I tell you how we've been ranked as a country, you get to understand. The Corruption Perception Index actually measures the perceived levels of corruption in the public sector in countries and territories worldwide, and it draws from 13 expert assessment areas. And this is actually something that Kenya seems to be, doing, I would say, not so well at. And the scale that is used in this particular index is that it scales from 0 to 100. Now, if you're in 0, it means you're a highly corrupt country. And if you're ranked 100, then it means that you're a clean country when it comes to matters corruption. And this report actually just gives us a perspective on the global progress that you're making in terms of fighting corruption. Now, looking at other issues here, like I told you, this is actually one of the areas that we need to really tighten our tighten our belts on in the war against corruption. Let me just take you through, you know, how we've been ranked as a country. Kenya seems not to be doing so well when it comes to matters graft. Now, this is how we are doing. Kenya scores 28 out of 100, and in 2018, Kenya scored 27 out of 100. Now, I told you 0, we are not doing so well. 100, then we are doing well. So if you are ranked 28 out of 100, then that means we are below the average. Now, since 2012, Kenya has been scoring between 25 and 28 out of 100. This is actually something that is not so good. If I take you through the averages in the region and even globally, the average ought to be at 32. Now, if you score 30, the global average is 43, and in sub-Saharan Africa, the average that you ought to be scoring is 32. So currently, if you're at 28, it means we are not even beating the mark that is 32 in Africa. So going even globally, that's another conversation altogether. Now, in the rankings, among all the countries that were assessed in this particular survey, Kenya is at position 137 out of the 180 countries and territories that were part of this particular survey. So this actually is depicting a very slow progress in the fight against corruption globally. Taking you through something interesting, looking at how we are faring, it would be interesting to look at other countries. So yes, we may not be doing so well. So how about our neighbors? In East African region, Rwanda is the country that is leading, having scored 53 points. Tanzania coming in second in the East African region, having scored 37 points. Then I believe we are position 3 in East Africa, yes. Kenya and Uganda tied at position 3, that is scoring 28. Then Burundi comes in at position 4 with 19. South Sudan with 12 points. So looking at, you know, the final issue here, in the sub-Saharan Africa, just to look at which countries, because as they say, Africa faces a lot of challenges, so this could actually have added on to the fact that probably there could be slow progress in terms of fighting graft, but there are other countries still in Africa that are doing so well in terms of fighting corruption. Look at countries like Seychelles, scoring 66 points. That is way above the global average. Botswana scores 61 points. Ethiopia having scored 37 points. Countries like Zambia having scored 34 points, that is above the sub-Saharan Africa average. So looking at how other countries like Nigeria, it's an interesting report. You can go through it just to find out more about how we are making progress in terms of corruption. But it's not painting a very good picture, Achienga, in terms of the speed at which we are fighting corruption in our country. So there's still a lot of ground to be covered in. Such conversations as what we're having in studio really need to be taken a notch higher. So we still welcome our viewers to be part of the conversation that we are talking about. And here at Walking the Talk, we are looking at all angles. And today we are looking at the area of tax, just to look at how we can slay the beast of corruption when it comes to tax compliance. It's back to you, Achieng. I'll be back with more feedback from our viewers.
All right, thank you, Safin. And Esther, just listening, you know, to those numbers, the perception index, and tying it in, you know, when it comes, you know, tax fraud is just one of the ways in which we are facing, you know, corruption in this country. Do you see us getting to a point where we will not be talking about corruption and taxes in this country?
Yes, we are focused and we'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How will we get
because,
there?
Because the fighting corruption is the third world war. And we are not giving up because we are focused. And we are putting measures in place to do this. And each organization should do that. And normally each individual must say, if each individual in Kenya says that no to corruption, we will move. And in terms of KRA, we have put in place a number of issues or measures to control, to curb corruption. And I can enumerate them, isn't it? Yeah.
Maybe you will enumerate them in just a bit, but I want to get David's thoughts regarding those statistics.
I'll comment that this is statistics which have been there over the years.
Yeah.
Countries are coming up with policies to address them. Kenya is not left out. If you look at the national campaign around this area, this is what the conversation has been, that let Kenyans use our Chapter 6 to come down to the institutions and the public to participate towards alleviating or reducing the prevalence of the perception that has been given by the statistics. We need to be aware that some of it is based on perception, and it is behoving on members of the public and the institutions to respond and to reflect on those perceptions of why are they coming up. And if the impact of what has been perceived is affecting service delivery, then the policies that have been put, for instance, in KRA, they are tended towards reducing the prevalence of any acts of corruption. Yeah.
So what was it that you wanted to enumerate when it
I want
comes
to
to
just mention like what we have done in KRA.
Yeah.
You know, each individual must say what you've done. You don't point fingers to other people who have failed, but you do what you can do. In KRA, we've done, one we have done is that automation of processes. Because corruption comes when a process is manual.
They
and
go
delays.
through people.
Yes.
People have
talking to people.
It's easy.
So interaction should have reduced through the automation. All the process, majority, almost 80%, are automated. So in terms of timelines, you know, corruption is basically delays in service delivery. We develop a taxpayers charter which spells out the rights and obligations of the taxpayers, and it's at the website, so people can see how long each services will take. So that it gives them the right to demand, why am I being delayed in terms of service delivery by KRA. We have also done, we drew awareness, both staff and stakeholders in terms of what we've done. And I've already mentioned that one before, isn't it?
Yes.
We have put in place policies, integrity policy in KRA. We have anti-corruption policy. We have the gifts policy.
But are these policies being followed? Are they being followed and
implemented? Yes, actually we enforce them, and we have a declaration of staff for those policies. And even if staff are found not to comply, we'll go through them through the investigations, and some have been sacked actually for not complying with the policies.
With the policies.
Yeah.
All right. Before we moved over to Safin, I talked about, tax fraud.
Yes.
Perhaps what are some of the ways in which, people can engage in tax fraud without necessarily teaching them how to how to engage in tax fraud, in terms of what you have identified as the leading ways in which people are trying to engage in fraud?
Practically, we have seen people who design schemes that are intended to reduce the taxes that they are supposed to pay.
Yeah.
Some have come with what we call like missing traders, whereby you see people sharing invoices purporting to have done certain transactions, and therefore when they are doing their filings, they sort of reduce the tax that they were going to pay. More, it's prevalent in issues to do with the VAT, where the electronic tax registers are involved. So people will give a physical or a tax invoice to a person who is engaged in business, while this other person, for instance, is not engaged. Such designs deny the government the tax that is required to be collected by these people who are in business. And this has been detected, and there is an action by Kenya Revenue Authority. And some of those people are facing prosecution. Some were caught and they were told you can then benefit from getting inputs from sources which were not involved in the trading chain.
Yeah.
And thereby that loopholes has been sealed. Yeah.
Okay. I think we'll take a short break now. You are watching Walking the Talk. It's time for us to take a quick break. Of course, our discussion centering around tax collection loopholes and how is the government working to seal these particular loopholes as we continue talking about the continued fight on graft. We take a short break, but we will be back in just a bit to get your feedback, so stay tuned.
this weekend on KBC Channel 1.
Sasa bibi harusi ndio huyu? Kuwa na heshima ndugu yangu, huyu babangu, huyu njoho hili. Unakuja na watu ndio mametuka. Kitu kama dafu na katopeni. Najilemba kama kupenda nazi. Watu hawa watu ni wazee wa majanga.
Na wewe matokeo yako utaitwa mzee wa majanga.
Mimi majanga
On the next episode of Elena's Ghost.
It's incredible. Yes. It's incredible how all of a sudden everything makes sense.
Okay. You see? There's another person playing the game.
Giving orders same as always. Blind to reality. Treating me like a servant when I'm actually the same as you. I have the same rights you have. I inherited my father's fortune.
Be careful!
Watching Walking the Talk, our focus of discussion this evening, just trying to look at what are some of the loopholes that are being used to evade tax and how can we better curb corruption in the revenue collection system. And I'm talking to Esther Masibai, who is the Chief Manager Ethics Compliance at the Kenya Revenue Authority, as well as David Ontweka, who is the Chief Manager Litigation at the Kenya Revenue Allocation. Yes. And now I'll just very quickly ask you, in terms of when we are talking about tackling graft among, tax collection agents, employees, are you able to do that effectively? Yes. Kenya Revenue Authority. Yes.
Yes, we are doing that. In terms of, in curbing corruption, key important is prevention. We have talked of investigation, of those ones enforcement of the law, but the people should be encouraged to prevent. It's supposed to be given priority. And in terms of prevention, we have like KRA, we do annual corruption risk assessment, from which we develop the plans and implement, and at the end of the year we evaluate. And so far, from the survey from EACC done released last year, revenue corruption prevention for KRA is rated by the public at 70% effective, and that is good. And we have put in place the corruption prevention committees at the apex, at the CEO level. There's a committee which is chaired by the Commissioner General, and members are the commissioners and heads of the department. And that committee gives the policy direction in terms of all the issues on corruption in the authority. And we have at a lower level, we have the departmental and regional corruption prevention committees, which are chaired by the commissioners, the heads of the departments, and the regional commissioners. And those ones, we are about 16 of them. And below that, at the operational level, we have the committees under integrity assurance officers. We have also 16 committees in each department and each in the region, so a total of 16. And these ones, they come up with the corruption prevention committee. They've identified the corruption risk assessment, from which now they develop the plan and they implement during the year. And they meet monthly for the IAOs, integrity assurance officers, and the committees, the department and the CEO meet quarterly to review the implementation status and the other issues arising, emanating from the or emerging issues on integrity.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. David, how do you deal with employers who, do not remit the taxes for their employees?
Like
and how rampant is the problem?
I don't want to say that it is pronounced, but I'm aware that there are those who have challenges. And we need to appreciate that an organization can make up a case by saying we have cash flow problems. We deducted, but we were unable to remit all of it. So what will happen under the law, they will be penalized for having deducted and not remitted. And what will happen is that the measure that is given to anybody who has not paid will be meted on them, and they will pay additional taxes on what they didn't pay. I'll just put it that it is, you may not really call it an evasion situation. It is where an employer says, I had these challenges, and if they put their case to the commissioner in charge of income tax, then a plan will be agreed upon, but they will have to pay the penalty or interest on the unremitted tax, which were due on a particular date.
Are these cases many that come to your attention?
There are not many. I may say in the recent past we had a few of them, but they were from government agencies. But some have since been able to remit the unremitted taxes. And where they have not, they are making those arrangements to see how to resolve it with the KRA.
All right, I want to look at it from the other point of view. Those who are due for tax refunds. What are you doing in terms of trying to reduce the wait time for someone to be refunded their taxes?
Catherine, what happens is that delays actually are there because of the three issues. Like we need to do due diligence so that we remove the issue of fraudulent claims. So that's what affects the delays, causes the delays in the payment of the refund.
Do you have many cases of fraudulent claims?
Yes, of course, some will want to be paid, and yet so you have to go through to see if they are supposed to be given, so that we will leave out the issue of fraudulent claims. And the other issue is that some claims are not supported. If somebody has submitted claims and you are not added the supporting documents, then we cannot. So we have to remind you to tell you, please submit the documents that will support this claim. And finally, as you are aware, we are talking of non-compliance in tax. So sometimes we will fail to pay because we don't have adequate funding because of the non-compliant taxpayers. So if every taxpayer can comply, then we should be able to pay them.
But so if you are due for a for a refund, you'd not want to hear that KRA doesn't have money yet. They're supposed to refund you.
No,
perhaps I will just put it this way. A taxpayer who's due for a refund and they have submitted all the documentation, it takes that same period, say in a month they were able to submit the supporting document, they will get their refund. But what my colleague was raising is that the delay by some people from complying affects the money, because these monies that they are getting refunds from comes from the taxes collected by the rest. For example, exporters will expect to be refunded after they have exported. But once their refunds have been validated through an audit process, they may find that by the time they are due for a refund, there is a delay or a lag. But that will be a shorter period, and that is now being managed through a system where once they have been verified, Treasury is informed and it provides the funding for clearing what has not been paid. But so essentially the delay, I will call it, is system, and it's both sides who contribute to that delay.
So what are you doing in terms of trying to address these particular challenges that you're talking about? Because the turnaround time is what seems to be a concern for those who are expecting a refund.
For taxpayers who are fully automated, it becomes easier to have their documents looked at by those who are auditing the refund claims, and then they are able to be given a feedback that they have been confirmed to be due for a refund. And by the way, we need to point out here that there are people who take advantage of that process when they become very manual. that is why I was mentioning about that delay. The documentation must be validated through the support that is required. For instance, one must have other methods of confirming that indeed this person exported. I'm just giving an example of the exports.
Yeah.
So that then you are not refunding a person who didn't export. And that's the only way then we can genuinely say you are due for a refund.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You've talked a lot about, investigations and, just trying to get to the bottom of those who perhaps are engaged in tax fraud. But in terms of the investigation department and enforcement department, is it well facilitated in terms of, resources and manpower to be able to reach each and every, Kenyan who is not paying like they should?
In terms of funding, the government give us, I think, reasonable, but though it's not so much, but we have facilitated. In terms of staff, we have two departments.
Yeah.
We have investigation, which handles the taxpayers in issues, and we have the internal department, which is the intelligence and strategic operations department, which handles the staff. So like the intelligence one, which is about 3 years old.
Yeah.
And we have given most of the facilities, and even the government have given additional funding to recruit investigators and intelligence officers.
But are they sufficient to be able to deal with, because we are looking at a very big number of Kenyans?
Of course.
Yeah, when I look at it, the resources that have been deployed for purposes of investigation, they are enough. But given now like the expansion of the tax base, that number will need to grow so that then it's stratified across the country. But when you look at those who are already deployed in that function, they are experienced tax auditors. They are able to respond and they are able to raise the assessments. If they are for prosecution, they are able to feed it to the prosecutors to deal with that. And if they are for demand for purposes of asking the taxpayer to account and pay for that tax, they are able to guide, having been fed with the intelligence on how the scheme of trying to evade was being done.
Okay.
So
all right. But before you comment, I want us to go quickly to Safin just to get feedback from the public before we continue with our discussion. So Safin, if you're ready, perhaps you can give us the feedback that you have so far.
Indeed, Achenga, a lot, that conversation you're having is generating a lot of reactions on social media. Kenyans are feeling the pinch because they are the taxpayers and raising a lot of concerns on how this money is spent. And just talking about some of the loopholes when it comes to collection of tax in our country. I'll begin on Twitter, one at Ian Oching. He says, Kenya Revenue Authority is the source of all our troubles. Ineffective tax collection methods only focuses on overtaxing these businesses, which is not right at all. Talking about overtaxing. Then we have Tony Gitonga at Tony Murega. You say one wonders over the economy of these desperate measures. Failure to stem revenue leakage orchestrated by corrupt and sloppy tax officials speaks volumes on the efficiency of Kenya's tax collection machinery. This should be the starting point. Now we go to Ndungu Wanaina. Ndungu says Kenya uses nearly half of its tax collection to service interest on loans. This situation is synonymous with countries at risk of debt distress. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Shefa Okore, you say Kenya is the leading tax haven in Africa, registering a financial secrecy score of 80%, sixth highest in the world, meaning it's a corridor for illicit financial activities like tax evasion and money laundering, hurting its revenue collection targets. Thank you so much for that. And one Saith, you say, whereas Norway is paying dividend to its citizens due to over collection of taxes, Kenya is stealing the meager collection. I guess it's time Kenyans should stop paying taxes. That's your opinion, Saith. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Thank you all of you who are sending your views. And just one question that came in. One of our viewers is asking, what measures has KRA put in place to eliminate the massive tax evasion in online businesses? What measures has KRA put in place to eliminate the massive tax evasion going on in online businesses? Thank you so much for that question. I believe it's going to be addressed. On Facebook, Peter Nyaoke, we asked whether the corruption is affecting management of revenue collected, and you said yes. Apostle Key Technology, you feel like this is not having any impact on the management of the revenue collected. And one Michael Owor, you say, but of course when corruption is present, nothing else works. Thank you so much for that. We will be taking more views as we continue with this conversation. Remember, at KBC Channel 1 is where you can interact with us, and of course remember to tag us as well at Kato Achenga, at Safin_Acheng. The hashtag we're using is Walking the Talk. Use that, we can be able to track your tweets and your messages on Facebook. Back to you, Achenga.
All right, thank you, Safina. I'll just take one that is in my inbox here. That's from Makanga, who is saying, Kenya collects lots of taxes. It's the use of public funds that is the issue here. But just listening to the feedback, what are your immediate thoughts, Esther, on the questions that Kenyans are concerned about?
Yes, Kenyans are right in terms of usage of money from tax. But on KRA, we collect tax and we surrender to the government. So the issue of usage is beyond our KRA. It is the ministry, it's the cabinet secretary, the national treasury, that. Yeah.
There was a question that she asked, the last one, about the online businesses.
Thank you, Catherine. I will say that if you watched keenly, there was this hula baloo about a mention by KRA that we are now going to start taxing the digital economy.
Yes.
And
that is the Twitter, the social
media,
YouTube.
The audience has just remarked, we have a debate in that area. But indeed, KRA is moving to that area to propose a legal framework for taxing in that sector.
So how far are you in terms of, going in that direction? Because there are a lot of people who earn from, the social media.
As you are aware, we are an agency. We only make a proposal to our policy makers, and now we are in the budget making cycle where some of the legal provisions are being proposed, so that then they will be taken to Parliament to be considered. I'm aware that among the statements that may come out, we'll be looking on how best to do that. But I will leave it that that's now a policy statement which will inform how Parliament will look at the whole sector.
Perhaps what informed this policy direction that you're taking?
This is informed by what, like, the viewer has already reacted, saying they think there is business which is going on and it needs to contribute to the tax kitty. Yeah.
So this is a strategy to expand your tax bracket?
It forms part of that wider strategy.
What are the other areas that you're looking at in terms of expanding your tax bracket?
We've mentioned about the turnover tax expansion. We are looking at the rental income, and we are looking at the high net worth people who are not been paying tax. We are looking for them to bring into the net. Yeah, those who have been evading tax.
All right. One of the responses when Safin was reading was the ineffective tax collection systems. Do you agree with that viewer that you have ineffective tax collection systems as KRA?
That statement may not be accurate in terms of comparing what KRA has done over the years and looking at the targets that are given to KRA. And even if the targets are not 100% met, how we improve our collections will give a different picture from that remark by the audience. Because you will see that over the years we have grown, and I'm aware that one was remarking of using information technology as a tool to administer tax collection. That has greatly improved, and it has enabled us to do that work without employing so much of human resource to do that. And we can't really, even from the environment, people will tell you that KRA has done very well in terms of facilitating those who are ready to pay. And that's why the growth has been there over time.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was another response about, sealing the revenue leakages. Or what are some of the issues that you're still grappling with when it comes to that?
The issues we are grappling are smuggling at the borders. Our Kenyan borders are porous. Like the border between Kenya and Somalia is so long, and people just moving. Smuggling is critical. And besides even smuggling, there's even insecurity and all those, which affects the economy. And when security then it affects the economy, and tax elitists and this smuggling, it affects the economy in terms of the manufacturing sector, and therefore that leads to low income, no employment, and that's why we'll now the impact is felt in the economy in terms of tax also. Yeah.
Okay. Our time is almost up, but there was a time you were talking about electronic intelligence gathering system as KRA. Did you start it? What's the progress so far?
Yeah, it's a long-term project we had in terms of corruption reporting.
Yeah.
Actually, but we are not able to move. We are still moving on, but we are still looking at because we have been moved up to the procurement stage.
Yeah.
Then we had challenges in terms of requirements from the procurement. The person, the company who had given that tender was not able to meet the requirements, so we had to again go back to
the drawing board.
So we are moving on. But however, we have come up with the measures. We have that as we wait for the long-term solution. We have opened a corruption reporting office on 26th floor, Times Tower. For those who are able to reach to us at the headquarters. We also have a hotline number. In terms of the hotline number is 0726 984 668. So the members of the public can reach out, and that would be very good, because if they can reach out to report to us who are not paying tax, we'll be able to collect tax. And we also have the email, corruption reporting at kra.go.ke. We also have another email, cic@kra.go.ke.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe you can just people can write to the CG in terms of letters, and more so in terms of as an incentive. We have KRA informal reward system, where members of the public can share information with us to collect revenue, and we'll give them 5% of the revenue collected as an incentive, up to 2 million.
I hope that works. Our time is up, but David, I'll give you just a minute to conclude.
Yes, I need to say that KRA is not working in isolation from the broader government approach. Currently, we are now employing the multi-agency approach, the whistle-blowing of information. One agency can share information with KRA. We have seen this person, this is what they are doing. Like the remark which was done on we had a haven of money and money laundering. We are aware that the Financial Reporting Center shares this information, and if it has an issue to do with tax, KRA normally responds and deals with this. And the legal framework for doing that is in place. And that has been of assistance in trying to track some of the tax evaders who have been dealt with by KRA.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Unfortunately, it's up, but we appreciate you finding time to come to studio and share with us some of the things that KRA is doing in terms of trying to seal some of these tax collection loopholes.
Thank you very much.
Well, we have been talking to Esther Masibai, who is the Chief Manager Ethics Compliance at KRA, as well as David Ontweka, who is the Chief Manager Litigation at the Kenya Revenue Authority. Of course, they've given you some of the lines where you can be able to report any incidences of tax fraud. And most importantly, I've got to know that you can get 5% of whatever they collect in the event that you report on anyone who is engaging in tax fraud. My name is Catherine Achenga. Thank you for watching Walking the Talk. Let me cross over to Safin to give your final comments before we completely wrap up the show. Safin?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, all of you who watched the show. And thank you. It's been nice interacting with your comments on social media. Now your opinion has counted in the conversation that we've been having Eric Juma, Brian Mas, and of course, Tecklin Williams Madara, James Kimathi. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. All of you who took part to be part of this great conversation. Remember, it's all about walking the talk, and we bring people and we representatives of institutions that are all stakeholders in this war against corruption, so that you can understand your role in fighting corruption in our country. Stay with us next week, another conversation that revolves around how we can slay the beast of corruption in our country. So be part of that as well. My name is Safin Aching Oma. Thank you so much for your time. Have a lovely night.